If you guys ever seen me looking like John's lost, what's going on? They moved that record button around. It's over here. They removed that record button around. One day it's here, the other day it's there. And anyways, Carolyn, talk to me. I just saw your hand. So before we get started, let me hear from Carolyn.
Happy Wednesday. Just wanted to tell Tara I so appreciate her yesterday. She was having challenges getting onto the Zoom call, and she was my wonderful guest, but she persevered. And that is the one thing that I love about this community. They show up and they show up big, and I just so appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool stuff. Carolyn, thank you for sharing that. Tara is a rock star. She is. Love you, girl. All right, I want to talk to you today about the MREA budget. But before I do that, I'm just going to go to the whiteboard and start drawing little stick figures. And we're going to start a budget conversation with the economic model. Now, the economic model begins with how much money do I want to make? In other words, what's my net income goal? And I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to turn all you people on Zoom just a little bit. So hold on, the ship's going to rock. If you haven't taken your seasick pills, I don't want you getting seasick this morning. All right, there we go. See, everybody in the room can see it. Everybody on Zoom can see, right? So the economic model begins with what's my net income goal? The next part of the equation is what's my average commission? That's funny because I know this, and all of a sudden I froze. C is units closed. D is listings needed. E is my conversion ratio from a listing appointment to a listing taken. And F is the number of appointments that I need to go on. So the economic model begins with a conversation around what's my net income goal, and it ends with a conversation around how many appointments do I need to go on. Now, if you're looking for the math equation on this, it is A divided by B equals C. So write that down. A divided by B equals C. In other words, net income divided by my average commission equals how many units I need to close. Now, D, listings needed, E, conversion ratio, F, appointments that I need to go on is D times E equals F. In other words, if my conversion ratio is 75%, then I'm going to take the number of listings that I need times 75% divided by 75%. I did that wrong. Divided by 75%, listings needed, it's D divided by E. Sorry about that, everybody. Equals F. How many appointments do I need to go on? Okay, good enough. Now, from the economic model conversation, we go to a lead generation model. In other words, the economic model begins with what's my net income goal? It ends with how many appointments do I need to go on? Now, the lead generation model starts with the number of appointments I need to go on, and what does the model look like that's going to get me those number of appointments. Now, from the lead generation model, we go to the organizational model, which means I'm going to hit a ceiling in my business. And in order to break through that ceiling, this is, boy, I'm really messed up this morning. This is E to P, not P to E, entrepreneurial to purposeful, easy to focused and intentional. What am I going to do in order to break through that ceiling? Because, and I have a business of one. In other words, it's me. I'm going to hit a ceiling. And now I'm going to use people, systems, tools, and models in order to break through that ceiling. Well, I'm going to start hiring, leverage my 80% so that I can focus on my 20%. The 20% is what actually creates income for me. In real estate, we teach you at Keller Williams that your 20% is lead generation. It's going on appointments with buyers and sellers. It's taking seller listings. It's writing, negotiating, and executing contracts. And it's practicing and role-playing your scripts. So when I hire my administrative assistant, I share with them, this is my job description. It's the 5 things that I just shared with you. And then John, my job description to them is, your job description is everything else. I'm focused on the 20%. Your 20% is my 80%. Now, as I'm building my team, I'm going to hit another ceiling. And in order to break through that ceiling, I'm adding more people. In other words, that organizational model is getting bigger. Now we get into the budget model and we run out of paper. And the budget model is simply, of a millionaire real estate agent, is simply 30, 30, 40, which means my cost of sales is 30%. My operating expenses is 30%, and my profit is 40%. Now, this is the budget model of a millionaire real estate agent. It doesn't mean from day one that your cost of sales are going to be 30%, because they're not. It doesn't mean that your operating expenses are going to be 30%, because they're not. And it doesn't mean your profit's going to be 40%, because it's not. But as you build your business and you start adding people, you add salespeople, your cost of sales go up. You add administrative staff, transaction coordinators, listing managers, your operating expenses go up. And if you're not paying attention, you can have a really big business with a really lousy bottom line. I talked to a real estate agent recently who was making a decision to look for greener pastures. They were hitting that ceiling, not making the profit they wanted to make. That's frustrating. It's exhausting. It leads to resignation. It leads to looking for greener pastures. And their biggest challenge is their 30-30-40 model wasn't 30-30-40. Their cost of sales was more like 50. Their expenses were 35, and their profit was 15%. So they're bringing in $1 million in commission, keeping 150,000 of it. Wow. How would you feel if that were you? Exhausted. Okay. Now the time to fix this is before you build that big team. Gary Keller teaches in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, start out with an 8-lane highway. In other words, think big models from the very beginning. Don't wait until you need an 8-lane highway. All right, now we're going to go backwards just a little bit. In other words, starting with the basics. All right, so page 152 is where you're going to find the budget model in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, page 152. Got it? Cool. All right. Now, Gary says the budget model is about understanding what happens to your money between gross revenue and net income. A is gross income, B is cost of sales, C is operating expenses, D is net income. In other words, it's gross income, A, minus cost of sales, B, minus operating expenses, C, equals D, net income. Now, the focus of the budget model is minimizing your expenses to maximize your net income. Minimize your expenses in order to maximize your net income. And one of the reasons we're talking about this today is, first of all, it's my job to teach you this book. We're also talking about it because as we're getting into Shift and we get into the 12 tactics that we want to use in order to survive, to thrive in a shifting market, tactic number 2 is remargin your business. In other words, expense management. In other words, budget. Now he goes on to say, move from seeing expenses as the cost of doing business to seeing every dollar you spend as an investment in your future. So many business people, especially real estate agents, justify unnecessary expenses as the cost of doing business. And you'll hear them say things like, I just reinvested it in the business. Well, what was your profit? I really don't know. Well, how much money did you make? Not sure. Well, what did you do with the money that you did make? Well, I just reinvested it in the business. You know, it's the cost of doing business. Read Profit First, great book. All right, so move from seeing expenses as the cost of doing business to seeing every dollar you spend as an investment in your future. For every dollar invested in a business expense, you should receive some multiple of that dollar back. All right, some multiple. Let me explain what I consider acceptable. Minimum 4-time return, minimum. If I'm investing $1,000 a month in order to generate leads, then I expect to get at least a 4-time return on that investment. If I'm spending $1,000 in order to make $2,000, it's not a good investment. Now, these people who call you, and because you're a real estate agent, you get called every day from these people who have the silver bullet that they want to sell you in order to build your real estate business. And they'll say things like, well, you know, it only costs $10,000 a year. And if your average commission is $10,000, you only need to sell one home because you've invested in this and it's a good investment. Well, my answer to that is no, it's not. I'm not going to spend $10,000 to make $10,000. I'll just put $10,000 in the bank and let it collect interest. It's a bad investment. I'm going to invest $10,000 to make $40,000. Now that's minimum. What I'd really like to see is a 10-time return on that investment. There are 3 key areas of your budget model. Number 1, lead with revenue. All right. The bottom line of lead with revenue is make money before you spend money. The only money that you should be spending in the beginning is money that you absolutely have to spend. All right. You have to pay to get your real estate license. You have to pay to join the board of realtors, right? If you get a listing, you have to have a sign to put in the front yard. You have to have a lockbox to put on the front door. These are expenses that you have to make. All right. But outside of that, you should not be spending any money. That means when it comes to lead generation, focus on being prospecting based first, building relationships in your database, finding opportunity by adding value to people that you know who know you and like you. And the only time you should start spending money in order to generate leads is after you're making considerable money. When we started the Dietz team back in 2008, it was 2010 before we spent the first dollar on lead generation. It took us 2 years before we started spending money on lead generation. And then 90% of the time, I canceled it after 2 or 3 months because I didn't like the return that we were getting. I'm like, screw that, we're going back to making calls. All right, lead with revenue. Number 2, play red light, green light, which is what I just said. If you spend money, the moment you spend it, it's red light. Meaning I'm going to wait and see what kind of return I get for this investment before I spend another dime. Now, when I see that I'm getting a return and I'm leading with revenue, it's green light. I'm going to spend money again. The moment I do, it's red light again until I see a return from that. Now, if I'm talking from a perspective of building my team, it would look like this. I've made my first hire. That first hire is administrative assistant. It's red light. I'm not going to spend any more money until I see a return on this investment. And the return that I'm looking for is what? Plus 10? It's the same thing here. I'm looking to plus my business with this added investment. Okay, I don't want, it's an operating expense, but it's an investment. Now it's red light until I see a return on the investment, and then it's green light again, and I'm hiring a closing coordinator. So I've hired my next administrative assistant. Now it's red light. It's red light again until I see a return, and then it's green light again, and I'm hiring a listing manager. Now it's red light again, and it's red light until I see the return, and now I'm going to start building my sales team. So lead with revenue and play red light, green light. Number 3, develop self-discipline to stick to the budget. Stick to the budget. Make the budget the bad guy. When somebody comes to you and says, hey, can we spend money on blank? It's a business question, right? It's a part of your company. And they're saying, you know, we've got this new cool system that will generate leads. We'd like to add this, and it's going to cost blank. All you have to do is look at the budget, and your answer is, it's not in the budget. Now in December, when we start business planning for next year, we could take a look at adding that to our budget, but right now, it's not in the budget. Make the budget the bad guy. That way you don't have to say, no, we're not going to spend money on that. Your answer is, it's not in the budget. By the way, this works at home too. It may not be an easy conversation, especially if you're talking to your kids. Hey, can we go to Disney World for the 20th time this year? Let me look. It's not in the budget.
That's how corporations.
It's how corporations work.
Yearly budgets, and if you want something, it's not in the budget, we visit in December.
Yeah. That's how we should all live our lives. That's how we should run our businesses. If you will adopt 3 things into your business plan, number 1, lead with revenue. Spend only money your business has generated. Make money before you spend it. Start with this approach as early as possible and keep it a discipline throughout your career. If you hold to the lead with revenue approach, it will force you to lead with lead generation and sales, not expenses. Lead with revenue. Number 2, play red light, green light. You spend money, you stop, you hold it accountable until you spend more money. And number 3, stick to the budget. All right, there's an exercise I want all of you to do. This is in your business and in your home. I want you to create 3 columns. You can color code and have 3 different colors. And I want you to go through every single line item of your, I want to go to your checkbook, right? And that nobody uses a checkbook anymore. So just look at your statement, look at every single thing you're spending money on. And I want you to have 3 columns. Number 1 is, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what this money is for. I don't know what blank, blank, blank app is to Apple. I don't even know what it does. Okay. Yeah, you're laughing because you have those, right? And I know that because I do. I also know because my wife comes to me and says, what is this? What is this? What is this? I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no idea. All right. Which means I'm not using it. We're just spending money on it. So create a column of, I have no idea what this is. It's true in your business as well. Okay. And if you don't think it exists in big companies, we did this exercise as the Waxman Group last week. And we looked at every single line item for Keller Williams Coral Springs. There was 100 things on there, right? And there were a lot of things that I'm looking at 7 years as a team leader. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that is. All right, so that's your no idea column. The next column is I like this and I would like to keep it. That's your subscription to ESPN Plus. So I look at ESPN every day because I'm checking scores. I'm a jock. And I used to pay for ESPN Plus because 90% of the articles, you can't read them unless you pay for ESPN Plus. I like that. I would like to keep it, but I don't necessarily need it. So guess what? I don't have ESPN Plus anymore. Got it? That exists in your business world as well. And then the last column is I absolutely have to have this. So one of the things that stayed on the absolutely we need to have this list for Keller Williams Coral Springs when we were going through this exercise is rent for the building. Guys glad about that? Yeah. Because if we would have excluded that, hello, where are we meeting? Out in the street? Rent.
Give me on the second floor.
Okay, salaries. We're not laying anybody off and we're not abandoning the building. So those were on the absolutely have to have list. By the way, they're the only two things that existed on the absolutely have to have list. Everything else was up for discussion. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at columns A and B. And I want you to reduce your total spend in columns A and B by at least 30%. That's the exercise. Column C is you have to have. So exclude that number from the total monthly budget. Now what you have left is everything that lives in column A and B, and exclude. I want you to cut that by at least 30%. Why am I suggesting you do that? Because if we're looking at a market shift, we're looking at the possibility that times are going to get tough. You need to get real and get right with your budget. Here's what I want you to be aiming for. Whatever your monthly cost of living is, whatever that number is, if it's $10,000 a month, I want you to have 9 months of cost of living in a savings account or an account that's liquid that you can get your money, your hands on it quickly if you need it. 9 months. 9 months. Why 9 months? Well, because if you study history, the average recession lasts 9 months. That's why. All right, talk to me. What'd you guys hear?